Hey there, IELTS learners. I'm David Wills, and this is another episode of TED-IELTS. Today we're going to be looking at paraphrasing, which is a vital IELTS skill. It can serve you well in the whole of the writing exam, but today we're just going to be looking at task 1. And in particular, we're thinking how to paraphrase the question. So why do we need to paraphrase? When it comes to paraphrasing the question, we're going to do this in the introduction to our essay. It's a great way to begin the essay, to talk about the main idea of the line graph or bar charts or pie chart or whatever it is that you're looking at. Of course, we can't just repeat the question or the title itself because this is not using our own words. And so we need to be able to say the same thing as the title or question says, but in new words. This is called paraphrasing. Paraphrasing is saying the same thing, but with different words. Let's look at these two examples. Their apartment is very big. Their flat is very spacious. Here we can see apartment and flat have roughly the same meaning. Apartment is more or less American English and flat is UK English. And big and spacious have pretty similar meanings. When we have words with the same meanings, these are called synonyms. Knowing synonyms can help you in all parts of the IELTS exam. In fact, it would be very difficult to pass the IELTS reading exam without a very good knowledge of synonyms. Here we can see some examples of synonyms. Countries has more or less the same meaning as nations, and we can rephrase unemployment as people without jobs. Being able to do this can help us to enrich our language. For the speaking and writing exam, it allows us to create more interesting and diverse language and avoid repetition. And in the listening and reading exams, it allows us to hear information in the passage that is different from the information in the questions. It can, of course, be difficult when we're looking to do the writing exam and we see a word like unemployment in the question or title of the line graph. One way around this is to close your eyes and write from memory instead of looking directly at the information. This can help us to write about the idea rather than simply using the same words. When we look at the graph or chart or table, we can take some words directly from it. However, we might want to change those words. We might want to change them to synonyms or to change them to a slightly different form. Here we can see production, which is a noun, becomes produce, which is a verb. We can change percentage into proportion. These are common words that appear in IELTS Task 1. You should practice seeing these kind of words and changing them into different forms. When you're doing practice at home, you can use a thesaurus. But in the actual exam, of course, you will have to do it with your own knowledge of paraphrasing. Let's do an activity. Here you can see a line graph showing the proportion of population aged 65 and over. The question is below the graph. Pause the video now and attempt to do your own paraphrasing. I will show you my answers in just a few seconds. Here we can see 3 versions of the question. In the first one, we can see we have changed the phrase 3 different countries to actually list those countries. We have also changed the date range 1940 and 2040 to over a period of 100 years. You can see we've changed graph to line graph and shows has become illustrates. In the second example, we've kept the beginning, the graph shows, but we've changed proportion to percentage. And we've changed population age 65 and over to elderly people. The third one gets more creative and inventive with vocabulary use by incorporating the phrase demographic changes. An important lesson to remember is don't change too much. Remember that the question will highlight important features concisely. If you try to change the language too much, you might miss the point, or you might make some grammatical errors. You should try to take inspiration from the question and from the details you can see, but put it into your own words without expanding too much. When you're changing verbs to nouns and so forth, it is easy to make grammatical errors, so pay attention to this and avoid making silly mistakes. Here we have another example. This time we're looking at a slightly complex bar chart. Once again, you can pause the video and try to write your own paraphrasing of this question. Here we have another 3 paraphrasings of the question. In the first one, we can see we've added the word estimated. This comes from the bar chart itself, from the title. So we've incorporated details from the question and the data. We've reordered and expanded the language from several Gulf countries to 6 countries in the Gulf, and we've changed between 1990 and 2010 to over a period of 20 years. You can see this is very similar to what I showed you in the previous examples, and these are really simple and easy ways to practice paraphrasing. You should practice this yourself, and it will help you to paraphrase far more effectively. In the second example, we've changed shows to illustrates, and again, we've stuck with 6 Gulf countries. And we've established that it is 20 years starting in 1990. You can see, once again, we're just saying exactly the same thing, but in new words or new word order. In the third one, we incorporate the phrase bar chart, and we, instead of saying shows or illustrates, we say compares changes. Then we give some information from the axes, which is that these changes are measured in millions of barrels per day. And we give more information of oil that is produced in a number of Gulf countries. So instead of saying several Gulf countries, we say a number of. Here is our final example. If you like, you can take a few minutes, pause the video, try to rewrite this question in your own words. Here we have 2 ways to reword this question. So again, we expand from graph to line graph, and we change shows to illustrates. This is just a very easy and very common way of paraphrasing. So we change the unemployment rates to the percentage of people who are not employed, and instead of stating the US and Japan, we say in 2 countries, and again we change to a period of 7 years. The second one is very similar. We say the proportion of people who are unemployed instead of unemployment rates. Okay, thank you for listening. I hope this lesson was useful for you. Please subscribe, hit the like button, the notification bell, and check back next weekend for another episode of TED-IELTS. I've been your host, David Wills.